Today we're going to have a walk around the showroom and I'm going to share with you histories and details of each individual car. So come with me. We're going to start with my 1970 Lamborghini Miura S, which is a very rare right-hand drive example. It's done 16,000 miles from new. I've owned it since I think 2011. I've done about 3,000 or 4,000 miles in the car. I absolutely love it. For me, a Lamborghini Miura is one of the most iconic cars of all time. It's probably the most timeless design of all time, and it would most probably be the last car I will ever sell. We'll then move on to one of my Williams Grand Prix cars, which is a 15C. This, a 15C, was an absolute groundbreaking, I wouldn't even say arguably, I'd say definitely the most advanced car ever in Formula One. At the start of the 1993 season, Alain Prost was about 1,000,000 to 1 on to win in his Adrian Newey perfected car. This car belonged to his new teammate, which was Damon Hill, his first season in Formula One. When I first went to Williams and I was interested in being involved in their heritage program, it wasn't actually for this car. I went with the interest of buying something else, and whilst I was there and I heard that they still had this car within their collection, I had to try and buy it. The history of this particular chassis is phenomenal. It's got 3 Grand Prix wins, 8 podiums, 4 second places, fastest laps, everything. I mean, this is just a phenomenal car. I'm yet to drive. I have driven the car, but only on a runway. I haven't driven the car around a track yet. I've driven my other Williams, which we'll come to later. But I am really looking forward to taking this out and feeling what the active suspension is all about. We'll then cross back over and we'll go to this 1968 Ferrari 330 GTS. Only 99 of these cars were ever produced new. They're probably the best driving convertible Ferrari, classic convertible Ferrari, even more so than a 250 California Spider. They are more nimble, they're faster, they're just a beautiful car to drive. This particular car, I'm going to try and speak with you today about histories of each car, so bear with me, hopefully I can remember all of the histories. But this particular car was one owner from 1968 until 2011. It's totally original throughout. If you have a look at the paintwork, you'll see all the paintwork is cracking all on the front. It's got original interior. It drives fantastic. When I first purchased the car, I used Bob Houghton a lot in the UK, who I think are the best Ferrari service specialists. And I was speaking with Bob about another car that he was working on at the time, and he has looked after this car for the last 4 or 5 years, and their comment straight away was, "I heard you bought the 330 GTS. What a phenomenal car that car is to drive, isn't it?" And that's all because it's never been totally restored, it's never been taken apart, it's just been really well maintained from new. And we have agreed a sale on this car, and I tell you, it's going to a very special home, and I think he's going to enjoy it a lot. We'll then move on, we'll cross over and we'll go to the Ferrari supercar section, starting with these F40s. Now, I've always stated that we will probably only be interested in one in maybe 20 or 30 F40s we're offered. They built a lot of these cars. They built, just short of 1,300 cars. But of those 1,300 cars, there's, the biggest majority have checkered lives. Their mileage sometimes isn't as shown or stated. They're a very simple car. They are literally about as stripped out as any car that has ever been produced. And, you know, they are cars that have been used a lot on the track. Sometimes, you know, many of them have had lots of accidents. And it's so, we really need to pinch ourselves to think of the 3 cars that we've got lined up here. Never, for as long as I've ever been in the business or buying these type of cars, have I ever witnessed 2 cars as good as this together, let alone 3. So we're quite lucky today, and we're quite lucky to have them here in stock. So let me tell you about them. This particular car is one of the prototypes. They originally built 8 F40 prototypes for development purposes. A lot of those cars have been destroyed. They was used for crash testing purposes. A couple of them was converted into the F40 LMs. This is the purest of all of them. It was gifted after its days as being the factory prototype. It was gifted to Marco Piccinini, who was the head of Ferrari Formula One, and it was gifted by Enzo Ferrari himself. And all of this is documented within the car's history file. It's only done 8,000 kilometers in total from new. I purchased the car from Marco in 2016. It's fully Ferrari Classic A certified. It's just a very special car. There's lots of little differences on the prototype compared to the normal production cars. You'll see the wing mirrors are positioned in a different wing mirrors in a different position. The vents on the rear, you have 5 vents compared to the standard 4 vents. Then when you go into the interior, you have a different color finished tub. You have things like quilted leather headlining, which is quite unusual for 1987. It reminds me of an Arnage T from 2002. You know, this is a very special car. I think without doubt it's the most valuable F40 road car in the world, and it belongs in a really special collection. Then the next car that we come to is, I never knew existed actually. F40s have always been a car that I feel like, you know, we're very close to. We're very active in the F40 market. We've bought and sold a lot of the cars, and we only specialize in the very best cars. And this car being a UK supplied car from new, I thought I knew where all of them were and who they were delivered to new, but this car was delivered new to Sir Sterling Moss, which is pretty cool. It's had one owner for the last 25 years and has only done 3,000 miles from new. It's totally original throughout, but, and that leads me on to the next car. It's worth noting at this point, it is totally original throughout, this car. Then the sister car next to it is another UK supplied car that was one owner from new until I purchased the car in 2016 or 15 maybe. It's done 1,200 miles from new. We bought the car in 2015, we sold it to a very good client in 2015, and we've only just purchased the car back into stock. But if you look at these 2 cars next to each other, although they're both totally original throughout, this car would blind you with the carbon weave that everybody talks about, where on this car you can't see much of the carbon weave. Now, to the novice, a lot of people would think, oh, this car has been painted, it's not original because you haven't got that carbon weave, but that's untrue. When these cars were delivered new, a lot of the first owners were complaining about the carbon weave, saying it reminded them of a Hessian sack of potatoes. And I've paid £140,000 for a car, and look at the quality of the paintwork, it's rubbish. So then later on into the production line, Ferrari changed the way the cars were produced, and they put a gel coat underneath the paintwork. and for that reason you lose the carbon weave that is so evident on this car. But there's other ways that we find, and when we inspect cars to know if they're original or not. These F40s, they have lots of hidden body numbers. They have, if you know what you're looking for, there was lots of factory markings that all the cars had when they left new. And I am absolutely satisfied and comfortable that this car is 110% original. I mean, even the finish actually that you see in the forks of the engine lid is all correct, where when a car's painted, you always find that people accidentally paint these red instead of them being black. But all these three cars are just very different, but all phenomenal for their own reasons. All super low mileage. The provenance on each car, one owner until 2016, 1,200 miles from new, totally original. One owner for the last 25 years, and the first owner being Sterling Moss. And again, within the history file, letters from Enzo Ferrari to Sterling Moss before Enzo passed away, talking about the car, talking about Sterling, that he wanted Sterling to have one. And then, this very special car on the end, which was the prototype, that was one owner until 2016, and that one and only owner being Marco Piccinini, an absolute legend in motorsport, a legend in the Ferrari world, a legend down in Monaco these days. And then when we go on to the Enzo, or go on to Enzos that we have, plural, this is a factory black car, believed to be one of only 3 factory black with black leather interior. It's done 400 kilometers from new. It was delivered new to Italy to a friend of Luca de Montezemolo. We purchased the car in 2016 and sold the car to a very good client. It's just indistinguishable from new. It's absolutely perfect throughout. It's got a lovely history file, a very special car, a collector's piece. I know people are so quick to comment and say, a car should be driven. It's a shame that it's got such low mileage, but there's lots of clients out there, there's lots of people, including myself, who can get pleasure out of just knowing that they own something so special, out of being able to go into their garage, their man cave, and just appreciate what they've got. The same as if you have a painting on the wall. This is just rolling artwork. And to own something that's so rare, they only built 399 Enzos and one extra for the Pope, so 400 cars. And this is one of only 3 in factory black with black. There's been lots of them that have been painted black later in life. It's a very contemporary looking car for a car that's 17 years old, 16 years old. So I think this is very special, and I think it deserves to go to a great collection. And then we go on to another very special car. It feels like every car I'm telling you about has unique stories, and that's what we try and stick to. We try and stick to buying cars that are just very special, cars that are not run-of-the-mill cars. Even though, how could you ever consider an Enzo as a run-of-the-mill car? Well, you could, because you could have a car that's got checkered history, that's got 1 million owners, that's got either not warranted mileage or suspect mileage. But this particular car was car number 2 off the production line. You probably won't be able to see from the video, but the weave on this car, you can see the production of these very early Enzos are different from the later cars. It's quite blinding, actually, and also a sign of its originality that it's never been repainted from new. It's done 6,000 kilometers. It was car number 2 off the production line. It was shown by the Ferrari at the Nürburgring, driven by Michael Schumacher. Just a very special car, and you know, in probably my favorite color, even though the black might be rarer. I love the idea of the Rosso with the Rosso red leather interior. We then go on to this 512M. This is quite a cool car and a cool story, actually. Only 41 of these cars were ever delivered new to the UK. So only 41 UK right-hand drive cars. This car's done 14,000 miles from new. And my good friend Ian Poulter, I remember calling me up in 2014, and Ian and I are, you know, we're very good friends, and we chat, you know, most days. And he called me up and he said, "Hey, I've just been playing golf at Woburn, and this guy that was caddying for me said that his friend has got this Ferrari that he wants to sell." And you know, I hear things like this all the time, and you know, I take it with a pinch of salt. And then the next day Ian called me back up and he said, "Hey, I seen that guy again today and he definitely wants to sell that car." And I said, "What is it?" And he said, "It's a Ferrari 512M. It's just around the corner. He hasn't used it for years." So he said, "I'm going to go and have a look at it." So we went together to go and have a look at it, and it was parked in this guy's garage and had not been used for 7 or 8 years. The brakes were seized on. It had literally like an inch thick of dust on it. You couldn't see if it was red or grey. The interior, you know, was, it just looked like what it had been. It had just been left for several years. And we ended up buying the car, and we bought the car together. And since then we've just kept it, and we haven't done anything with it, although we are thinking of selling it at the moment. And then we move on to this 360 Spider, which is has only done 2,000 miles from new. Actually, this is a bit of a coincidence. I took this car in part exchange for a Ferrari 512M, another UK right-hand drive car, that I sold to Lord Anthony Bamford. And this was Lord Bamford's car, 2,000 miles from new, perfect throughout. You know, I think this car represents really good value for money. It's under £100,000. It's not retail red. You know, it's a really attractive colour. It's done super low mileage. I think that's a good car for somebody to buy, and maybe, you know, if they wanted a car to use as a bit of fun of a Sunday or on high days and holidays, and took a long-term view and said, well, I'm going to buy a car. I want a second car or a third car, and I'm going to keep it for 10 years. You know, I'd find it hard to believe that anybody could lose money in that car. If you keep it low mileage, you know, it's a good buy for somebody. We then move on to this F430 Spider, another car we took in part exchange. This car I actually sold when it was new for about 40,000 or 50,000 pounds over list. It's done 14,000 miles from new. It's got amazing service history. It was serviced by Greypool in 2008, 2009, 10, 12, 13, 15, 17 and 18. Like, incredible service history. Really high spec. You know, got all the electric seats and got the shields on the wings and the red calipers and the carbon trim interior. This car's under £90,000, 89,500. Again, really good value for money for somebody. We then are sticking to contemporary Ferraris, and this Ferrari 599 GTB, one owner from new, 10,000 miles from new. Perfect spec, probably the best spec for a 599, black with the cream Daytona seats with the black fingers. Very high spec. I took this car in part exchange against a Rolls-Royce Phantom Coupe off of a really cool client in London. You know, it's under £120,000, and again, I think it shows great value for money. We then go to this right-hand drive 575 Super America. You know, these cars, we've got the 575 Super America and then the 550 Barchetta. So very much, you know, the same bloodline, the predecessor. What's your favorite? You know, my favorite of the two, I actually, even though some people, the roof on this car was a problem for a lot of people when it was new, because you've only got a temporary get your home roof and it takes you about 2 days to put it on, and about 3 people. So it's actually, the roof is complete rubbish, I'm not going to lie. I would probably, whoever buys the car should only use it on nice sunny days, but I only use my cars when the weather's good anyway. I don't take my cars out if it's pouring with rain. And to drive, I actually prefer the 550 Barchetta to the Super America. I love they did build these in manual, but very few of them was in manual. I can't remember the exact number, but very few cars. All of these cars were manual gearbox. I think they've got a nicer suspension. I think they're a better looking car, but you know, that's just my opinion. A lot of people prefer the Super America. The Super America, you've got the glass folding roof, that you can also, you've got a switch in the middle that you can tint and make it darker. So, you know, maybe a bit more advanced. Aesthetically, they look similar. This car is so cool. It's got the number plate 575 SA. So the ultimate number plate for a 575 Super America. You know, we've priced these cars at, this car is just under £300,000 and this car is like £325,000. Slightly lower mileage, you know, 6,000 miles compared to 10,000 miles. Somebody should actually buy the pair. I feel very comfortable owning the pair. I like to stick to buying cars that I really like, and then every day when I'm in my office and I'm looking down on the showroom floor, you know, if I keep a car in stock for too long, I'm very patient. I don't care how long we keep cars in stock for, because if I like them and I believe in the cars, then we try and price our cars right and they will go to the right owner and sell eventually. But I do like to just stick to buying cars that I like, and I like both of these. We then go to my 288 GTO. This, like the F40, was a prototype. This is the oldest prototype in existence. Of the 6 prototypes that were produced, only 3 of them are left. The other 2, one of them's had a color change and is now yellow, and then the other car is in the Far East somewhere and had, you know, several ownership changes. This I purchased from Marco Piccinini along with the F40 in 2016. I've owned the car ever since. A 288 GTO for me is probably my favorite of all of the Ferrari supercars, you know, followed by an F40 and then an Enzo, then a LaFerrari and then an F50. I've always liked them. You know, from when I remember buying them. The cheapest one I ever bought was £131,000, which, you know, I could kick myself these days, but that had done about 16,000 kilometers from new, but that was the best part of 20 years ago, at the absolute bottom of their values. Today they've moved up a lot more, or at least I hope they have, otherwise I'm very much overpaid. This is a very special car because it's not just the prototype, the oldest prototype in existence, it's the oldest Ferrari supercar in existence. It was gifted to Marco Piccinini by Enzo Ferrari as a bonus for his 1983-84 season. It was then delivered to him as a new car in Monaco, where he lives. You'll see the French yellow coloured lights, totally original throughout. We recently done the 288 GTO tour this year and the car performed impeccably. There's certain cars that I bought that I just don't think I'll ever sell, and the Miura is definitely probably up the top of the list, and this would be very either close to it or, you know, maybe even above it sometimes. I probably, as significance goes, this car's more significant than the Miura. I like owning special things. You know, I think this is a car you'll probably see me own for a very long time. We then move to this Ferrari 275 GTB that was delivered new to Sir Max Aitken, who was the boss of the Daily Express. It was originally delivered in Rosso, but later repainted in this very attractive Verde Pinot. One of only 42 UK right-hand drive cars, one of only 252 short-nose cars. Always been in the UK, believed to be the first Ferrari that Lord Anthony Bamford ever purchased. Maybe I should ask him if that's the case or not. Fully matching numbers, original engine, original gearbox, original body, original chassis. Just a great car. We priced it at £1,650,000, and when you look at how weak the pound is today or these days, you know, that's amazingly priced for somebody. I am really surprised that this car hasn't flown away. I thought this car would have sold by now. Let's leave Ferrari for now and let's see what else we've got. This is a very special car, a short nose production Jaguar D-Type. This is the ex-Dickie Atwood car, the 24-hour Le Mans winner. The car spent most of its life in Australia, where it was campaigned successfully. This car, Chris Keith Lucas, who is the Jaguar D-Type guru, considers this car as his favourite and probably the best production D-Type in existence. Just a great car, known history from new. We priced the car at $8.5 million. I'm surprised it hasn't sold. We've had it in stock for quite a few months. I thought it was sold by now because there weren't that many D-Types, 50 cars, and this being one of the best cars. Sometimes there's no reason, there's no answer why a car doesn't sell quickly, and then you might keep it in stock for 6 months and then you suddenly have 3 people who are all fighting over the same car. We do have a couple of interested parties. We turned down an offer about 6 weeks ago. I think this car is going to find a new home pretty soon, so let's watch this space. Then moving back to the Williams Grand Prix cars, this is the FW17, another Damon Hill car. Great chassis history, 2 wins. I'll let you into a little secret actually. Williams in period, after every race, if the car had a win, they used to put a little gold star. They used to put a silver star for second place, and they used to put a red star in the cockpit for any pole positions. So this car has actually got 2 wins, 3 seconds and 5 pole positions. It also has fastest laps. Again, this era, a 95 Williams was not just a competitive car, but probably the car to beat. It was Schumacher actually won the title that year in his Benetton, but the Williams were contesting the title throughout the season. The 93 car was easily the most dominant car in Formula 1, and then Williams, obviously in 92, they won the championship with Nigel Mansell. In 94, it was the Damon Hill and Schumacher start of their rivalry. 95 was the same. 96, Damon Hill won the championship in a Williams. Then you go on to Jacques Villeneuve. So very much that era was the Williams era in Formula 1. We then move on to an older Grand Prix car. This is a 1967 Brabham Bt 24. This is Jack Brabham's actual car. He was the only driver to ever race it in period. A real legend in motorsport, team owner, team principal, team driver, world champion. He won the world championship in '66. This was his car for 67. Lost the World Championship in 67 by something like maybe 1 point or 2 points to his teammate Denny Hulme. When they switched to the BT24, this car was way more successful than the Denny Hulme BT24, but the early part of the season when they were using the older cars, the older model, the model from the year before, the Denny Hulme scored more points in that period of the championship, which ultimately gave him the win later on in the season. This car has got 3 Grand Prix wins. It was the only Formula One, it was the car that won the only Formula One race that ever took part at Le Mans. So a very special car. You know, I was very pleased to buy the car a couple of years ago. We then go into something a bit more modern, and you know, you will see a mix in the showroom of our business model is really about collectible cars. They don't have to all be Ferrari 250 GTOs and Testarossas and McLaren F1s. You know, sometimes we sell delivery mileage minis or Land Rover Defenders, but every car that we specialize in are really collectible cars. However, you know, I grew up in the business of buying and selling luxury performance cars, and you build up great client loyalty over the years, and because of that you'll always see a scattering of modern luxury and, you know, performance cars such as the Ferrari 599 that we touched upon earlier, as its clients that whenever they want to buy or sell anything, whether it's a Range Rover or a Ferrari 488, I'd like to think we're their first port of call, and you know, we don't want our clients going elsewhere. So this particular car is a car that we supplied many years ago. It hasn't done many miles from new. It's like 13,000 miles. It's in a very special color called Parian Marble, which is like a pearl white metallic with a cream, I think it's called moccasin leather interior. 150,000 pounds. I mean, this is if there's ever a car that's a modern classic, a car that they're never going to build another Phantom drophead. You know, these cars were 330,000 pounds new. I think this is amazing value for money for somebody, and expect it to be sold pretty quickly. We then have this 2010 Bugatti Veyron that I've actually sold a couple of times in the car's life. It's only done 2,000 miles from new. It's in a colour called blue black over metallic silver, a UK supplied car. I first bought this car, it was an interesting story. I went to the Monaco Grand Prix with Charlene back in 2012, and a friend of ours invited us to fly with him on his plane over there, and he said, I've got some other friends coming along. And anyway, we bought this car off of somebody that I had never met before, this and a Ferrari Enzo, on the plane ride to Monaco. And then since then, the car has always been in our net, and we've sold the car on a couple of occasions and made sure we bought it back every time. It's always been beautifully well maintained by Bugatti London, great service history, invoices that would make your eyes water, but anyway, still great service history. Hasn't done that many miles over the last few years. These cars are just stupidly undervalued. I mean, to me, you know, this car is like £1.25 million, actually 1.3, and 1.3 million pounds for a Veyron that's done 2,000 miles from new, that's UK supplied. You know, it's less money than a Ferrari F40, and a Ferrari F40, however iconic they are, you know, they built the best part of 1,300 of them. They built 252 normal 16.4 Veyrons, and I think in years to come everyone will look back and everyone will say, I remember the time you could have bought a Veyron for, well, at one point they went down to about £600,000, and even today I think people will reminisce and say, I remember when there was just over £1 million. You know, a McLaren F1 went down to £500,000. It actually went a bit less, you know, probably £400,000, and that's a car today that's worth, you know, £15 million. We then move on to this McLaren P1. This isn't just a normal McLaren P1, this is a McLaren P1 experimental prototype. So after the 375 normal production run, McLaren decided to sell, a bit like Ferrari, you know, with their prototype F40 and prototype 288 GTO. They decided to sell their prototypes, the cars that they actually use for the development of the model. The cars were completely stripped back to the tub, so they were built like a new car again. The only thing that they retained was the chassis tag identity, that it was that car that done, you know, there was 14 of these cars and they all done something different. This car was actually used as the GTR display car at both the Geneva and New York Motor Show. It was then bought by a very well-known collector in the UK, a McLaren F1 owner at the time. The car, all of these experimental prototypes were sold for £1.25 million plus VAT. Now consider that for a second. A normal McLaren P1 was sold at just over £800,000, including VAT, and these cars were sold for £1,250 plus VAT plus extras. He ordered a host of MSO options on the car. You know, you've got the special McLaren orange paint, the McLaren heritage badges on the rear. You have, when we open the interior, hopefully the car is unlocked. You've got the nice orange stitching throughout. You have the XP embroidered into the headrests. It's only done 300 miles from new. You know, just incredible value for money. A normal P1 today, you know, with this mileage, we're asking £1,350,000 for the car, and they cost £1,250 plus VAT. So this car cost 1.5 million plus extras. You know, I can't remember from the original invoice, but I think it had probably 50 or 60,000 pounds worth of extras. So it cost about £1,550,000 new, and we're asking £1,350,000, and it's done 352 miles. So that car, how it hasn't flown away, I don't know, and it's a great buy for somebody. Now, let's step back in time. We've done some Grand Prix cars, we've done some modern supercars, we've done some contemporary cars. Now back to what we really love, which is our 60s classics. And what better 60s classic, what more of an iconic car is there? What is regarded as a more beautiful car than an Aston Martin Db4 Gt Zagato? Only 20 of these cars were ever produced, only 19 of them still exist, you know, regarded as the most beautiful car of all time. But just listen to the history of this particular car, which in my opinion is the best of all the Zagatos, and is widely agreed, as it's such a pure car, but it was delivered new and ordered new by Dr. Elio Zagato himself. The car has then throughout its life gone from Elio Zagato to Richard Williams of RS Williams, the ultimate in Aston Martin world. You know, the only place that you send an Aston Martin to if you want your Aston Martin to be restored or mechanically set up or gone through. You know, just a fantastic company. Richard bought this car for himself in 1974 and kept the car for the best part of 20 years. He then sold the car to Peter Lavanos, just a legend in the collector car world. You know, collector car royalty, I think would be best to refer to him as. he kept the car for a while and then sold the car to Lord Irving Laidlaw. So the history of this car is just the who's who of either the Aston Martin or the collector car world. Original engine, original body, original chassis, was lightly cosmetically restored by Richard Williams in his ownership. Lots of special unique features on the car, you know, with the deletion of the normal glove box, but to have the Aston Martin logo in chrome scripture. You know, you have Italian instruments compared to the normal Smith's gauges, which you will see on most other Zagatos, but as this car was delivered new to Elio Zagato, these cars were sent by the factory as a chassis with the engine to Italy for Zagato to clothe all of them, and this particular car was finished in Italy. There was a couple of cars that were delivered new to Italy, and they both had the same story, where they had Italian headlamps compared to the English headlamps. They had Italian gauges, they were trimmed in Italy. I mean, when you look over this car, you see so much originality. You've got the original Zagato perspex headlamp covers. You know, it's just a very special car, probably the most important GT Aston Martin in the world. We're very close to selling it, so let's watch this space. We then have this moving on, but keeping with the Aston Martin tradition, we have all of our Aston Martin lines lined up here, and this is another Db4 Gt, not a Zagato, a normal GT. 75 of these cars were produced. This has been beautifully restored over a 2-year period with no expense spared. Finished it in its original color combination. This boasts the most racing history of the largest racing history of any Db4 GT. Was campaigned for many years, lots of wins, and then converted in its most recent restoration, converted back to its complete as delivered spec by the factory. So fantastic car. Again, we're very close to having this car sold. This car's priced at £2,650,000, which is great value for money, priced really right. When you convert it again with our weak pound into euros or into dollars, you know, it's most probably going to be exported out of the UK. That's a little bit sad, but you know, we have great clients all over the world, and whoever we sell the car to, I would like to think that, you know, one day we'll get the car back. We then go on to, sticking with Aston Martin, we go on to this Aston Martin V8 Vantage Oscar India. This is a very early V8 Vantage. Oscar India, if you don't know what that stands for, it actually stands for October Introduction, which was a few changes to the V8 Vantage. The rear wings were slightly different, the finish on the dash from leather to wood. You know, a very early car, very collectible car. It's got the fantastic early V8 Vantage wheels. You don't see many of these cars that have been totally restored because they're not valuable enough. So this car's, I'm not going to say is unique, but it's very rare because of all the V8 Vantages. You get lots of car dealers who, or not just car dealers, but people in general who describe their V8 Vantage as restored, where what they actually mean is it's been repainted or retrimmed, or on the odd occasion maybe both. This car is a car that has been subject to a complete restoration, completely stripped. You can see the bodywork is absolutely fantastic. The gap lines are perfect. All the profiles are perfect. The paintwork, beautiful. Had the engine rebuilt by RS Williams. going back to RS Williams and how good they are. The car drives fantastic. I really like these cars. I find them very masculine, and they're not, you know, without being blasé about it, they're not very much money. You know, this car's a bit over £300,000, and if you went to restore one of these cars today and gave it to the Aston Martin factory, they'd charge you £500,000 plus VAT for a restoration. Like, this is just over £300,000 and it's completely restored. You know, it's going to last you a lifetime without needing to restore the car again. I think it's great value for money. Our final Aston Martin that we have here is the V8 Vantage Le Mans V600. Only 40 of these cars were ever produced. This is car number 19 of the 40. The lowest mileage we believe in existence, with 1,400 miles from new. Finished in Aston Racing Green, which is quite fitting as the V8 Vantage Le Mans was produced to celebrate Aston Martin's victory at Le Mans with the DBR1. Which the colours of the DBR1 was in the Aston Racing Green. We have had several of the 40 cars. These cars have always been good to us. We've had a few of them in black, left-hand drive and right-hand drive. You could have ordered them in V550 spec or V600 spec. The ultimate specification is V600. The ultimate specification is the 6-speed gearbox V600, which is how this car was born, and then very early on in its life, when it was about 1 year old, it was sent back to Aston Works, and Aston Works put an automatic gearbox in the car, a 4-speed automatic gearbox, at a very costly amount. It was about £40,000 or £50,000. It still has the manual gearbox with the car, but we have left the automatic gearbox in it, and it gives the next owner the option whether to use the car as it is, which this is the only V600 Le Mans I know of with an automatic box, or they can convert it back to manual. Just fantastic history file, known provenance from new, very few owners from new, well serviced, you know, priced at £525,000. It's a great car. We then jump back into the Ferrari world, because Ferrari for us is, can we say, our bread and butter? Ferrari for us is a very important brand. It's a brand that we definitely do better with than anything else. A brand that I'm most fond of, and this particular era is my love, my passion, which is the 50s and 60s, either sports racing or GT cars. This is a 1962 Ferrari 250 short wheelbase, one of the 14 right-hand drive cars ever produced. Very nice story with the car, where it was originally delivered new to America, even though it's right-hand drive. It was originally delivered new in a pale gold metallic, the only right-hand drive car finished in that color, which is very period. A really pure car, a car that has not been ever in an auction in its life. It's had very few owners from new. It's got its original engine, its original gearbox, its original body, its original chassis. We've only just purchased the car. We are debating whether to send it for restoration. I would like to return the car to its original color, but the heartbreak is that it is such a nice car. It presents so well that it's hard to actually pull the trigger and say, let's restore it. And I'm not a fan of just repainting a car, because a bit like what we spoke about earlier on the V8 Vantage, we're not about that. We don't just repaint cars or just retrim cars. We either like to do it all or do nothing. So we're going to have a couple of weeks to consider our options on whether we send it away and restore it, or we will launch the car for sale as is. But a very special car. I think we will then will completely change. We'll go from a 60s GT Ferrari to a James Bond Land Rover Defender Spectre. One of under 10 cars, I think it's one of 7 cars left in existence. They originally produced 10 of them. This car was used in the movie Spectre and then later road converted, road registered. We have sold this car and some of its sister cars in the past, and recently just purchased this car back into stock. You know, it's just I mean, what a thing. You know, look at the size of it. It's got this hydraulic handbrake which is now disconnected. You know, it's Recaro seats. You'll see some of its clippings from its days on the movie set. It's only done a couple of thousand miles from new and priced at £250,000. Now let's jump into our Porsche world, another brand that has always been good to us. We like to stick to the very best Porsches, and today we have some fantastic Porsches to share with you. Starting with this very rare 993 GT2. This is a car that I helped a very good friend of mine purchase in 2012. He was looking for a very good GT2 and we helped him locate this car. It's only done 16,000 kilometers from new. I recently purchased the car from him, and I tell you, we sold this car. We didn't advertise it. We sold it within a heartbeat. I mean, we could have sold it to 3 different parties. You know, we undersold it, but we made a profit, so we was happy to take our profit and move on. I think aesthetically, it's a beautiful spec car. It's in polar silver. It's got the sports Recaro racing seats. It's got the airbag. It's in the ultimate specification. So great car, going to a great home, going to one of our best clients, a very loyal client who's got not just a fantastic collection of Porsches, but a fantastic collection of everything. We're going to jump into a contemporary Lamborghini before we get back to our Porsche world. This is a Lamborghini Aventador, one owner from new, 2015, 2,000 miles from new, Verde Ithaca, pearlescent paint, black interior, Verde stitching. We took this car in part exchange against a Bugatti Veyron off of a new client, great guy who I know is in love with the Veyron. This is a car that, you know, is priced very well. It's £215,000, one owner from new, UK supplied, all of the important extras such as the transparent engine lid, you know, the navigation, green calipers. I think the best color, but color's always a personal preference. So, you know, I'm always a little bit reserved in telling somebody it's the best color, because some people like pink cars, some people like white cars. So you should always buy what you like. We then move on back to our Porsche world, which is the 991 GT3 RS Generation 2. This is a 2018 car, under 1,000 miles, all of the extras, £215,000. Great car to drive. I mean, just absolutely phenomenal, addictive. I'm not a huge modern car fan actually, because I always find that modern cars are so good that you've got to drive them so hard to be rewarded, to feel anything from them. And then it becomes silly, it becomes dangerous. You're either going to lose your license or you're going to have an accident. So I'm not a big modern car fan, but this particular car, I've done about 300 miles in it. I've obviously sold many GT3s over the years, and I tell you, they're a lot of fun, great value for money. You can drive them on the road and enjoy them, or if you want to literally drive it to a racetrack, use it for half a day around a racetrack, you'll get rewarded as good as you would in anything that you bought for the track, and then drive it back home again. and all for 215,000. So, you know, for me, great value. 918 Spiders. So Porsche's most recent hypercar. This particular car we've sold in the past. It's in liquid silver paint, which was about 40,000 euros plus VAT extra. It's done 4,000 miles from new, originally supplied through Porsche Monaco. We purchased the car in 2015 off of a client that I've known forever and a day. We sold the car to a new client at the time who subsequently part exchanged the car for something else with somebody else. Naughty, by the way. And then the car somehow found its way back to us, which our cars are always like that. They always like to come home. So we've got her back. Another 918 Spider, also in liquid paint. This color is called liquid chrome. You know, this car is believed to be the highest spec 918 Spider to ever leave the factory. Everybody who looks at it goes, oh, it's a Y-sack, it's fantastic. It's actually not a Y-sack, because the client didn't want to have a Y-sack without the sound deadening. He liked the spec of the normal production 918 Spiders, but he liked the aesthetics of the Y-sack. So we ordered the Y-sack wheels. We've got the carbon rear spoiler. We've got the Y-sack rear diffuser. We've got the carbon roof. We've got the carbon wing mirrors. I mean, this car's just got so many extras. It's done 5,000 miles from new. We also took this car in part exchange for a Bugatti Veyron, which is, I suppose, we've only got one Veyron here, but as a testament to how many Veyrons we sell, because when I've walked around these cars today, there's been numerous cars that have said, oh, we took that car in part exchange against a Veyron and another one. But yeah, good car. We've got it priced at £1.1 million, UK supplied. I think it's a great car. We then move on to the Porsche Carrera GT. The Porsche's supercar that was the predecessor to the 918 Spider. This is a car that I am confident in saying is the very best example anywhere in the UK. It is a one-owner UK supplied car, finished in the most desirable colour combination. I'm not going to say the best colour combination, because that colour is a personal preference, but factory black with black leather interior, 2,000 miles from new, one owner. I have been reliably informed that this is the last UK supplied Carrera GT that is still one owner from new. And although the mileage is fantastic, although the colour is fantastic, although the ownership is perfection, it's one owner, no accidents, no paintwork, the condition is beautiful. The thing that excites me most about this car is its accompanied history file. Most contemporary supercars, sports cars that you buy, you know, a lot of owners will give you a registration document and maybe the service book or handbooks, and if you're lucky, the spare keys. This car, the history file is just phenomenal. You've got the original order form, you've got the original invoice, you've got all the correspondence from the factory, from the supplying dealer to the first owner. You've even got the original dedicated Carrera GT frame poster that was sent to all the first owners, that is signed by Walter Roll. You know, the dedicated Carrera GT scale model. It's just everything. I mean, this car is totally complete. You know, it's a real collector's piece, but it's also done 2,700 miles, so it's not delivery mileage. If somebody wanted to buy it and drive it, you know, what's the difference between the car having 2,700 miles to 3,700 miles? You've got some space there where it's not going to affect the value, where you can drive the car, use it, enjoy it, and know that you own the very, very best. We have priced the car at £875,000. I couldn't care less if we keep that car for 50 years I love the fact of owning it. I love Carrera GTs anyway. I believe in Carrera GTs. I actually think in years to come that a Carrera GT will be more valuable than a 918 Spider. I also think an Enzo will be more valuable than a LaFerrari. And honestly, this is one car that's in the showroom, that's in inventory, that we own in stock, that I just couldn't care less how long we keep it. It's just a fantastic car and I love it to bits. We then move on to the original Porsche supercar, the Porsche 959, the tour de force of 80s supercars. You know, this was Porsche's answer, or was Ferrari's answer, was Ferrari's F40 the answer to Porsche's 959? You know, they were both launched at the same time. Very rare car. They built 292 examples. This car is a car that I purchased in 2015. At that time it was one owner from new, which was absolutely fantastic. Delivered in February 89, so a very late car, because most of these cars were 87 or 88. This car was delivered in February 89. Grand Prix white. It's unique. It is the only 959 that is in Grand Prix white with full can red leather interior. It is a colour to sample interior, as confirmed on its Porsche letter of origin and certificate of authenticity. It has its original handbooks, including the service book. I'm going to let you in on something that not many people know about. A Porsche 959, on the original owner's manual, on the original leather wallet, pouch, wallet, whatever you want to refer to it as, the first owner's name was engraved into the top right hand corner. Not many people know that, and it's very easy to know, number one, how many owners a car has got. So when we purchased the car in 2015, was it one owner, or was it one of those Italian one owner cars that seem to be 7 owners? But this car was a one owner car. It's got its original books, it's got its original service book, it's got its original spare keys, it's got its original matching pouches that has all of the toolkit and the tyre inflator, the warning triangle. It is a complete car. It's done 27,000 kilometers from new. We sold the car to a very good client in 2015. It formed part of his very impressive Porsche collection, and we recently purchased from him the 993 GT2 we showed you earlier, this 959, and a couple of other very cool Porsches that we will be bringing to the market soon. We then step back in Porsche time and we go to this 1972 911 2.4 S. Being a 1972 car, it's one of the very rare side oil filler cars. If you're a Porsche fanatic, guru, lover, you'll know what that means. You know, they actually moved this in 73 because a lot of people used to accidentally put petrol where you should be putting oil. Not a good thing to do, by the way. This is its original color, tangerine over black interior. How this car hasn't sold yet, I have no idea. This is £175,000. £175,000. It has its original engine. It's in its original color combination, and it has been freshly restored by model experts, not just marque experts who know what they're doing when they come to Porsches, but a company that specializes in restoring 2.4Ss. If you look at the gaps and profiles on this car, look at the quality of the paintwork, look at the interior. Actually, we're going to come around and I'm going to show you the car a little bit, because I still can't get my head around how much this car is and why it hasn't sold. Check the interior, beautiful. The quality of the restoration, all the correct finishes, you know, the correct stickers. This is a great buy for somebody. You look around, you see all the correct original glass in the car, the Securate glass. great car. I think somebody is missing a trick, so somebody get on and buy this car, otherwise I might have to keep it myself.